Hello. Um. Well, here we are. I don't know if I should like increase the size a little bit, or because it doesn't exactly fit the thing. Okay, it's fine for now. Yeah, fuck it. Yeah, I mean this is kind of a test stream. I'm also on new internet, so I just want to see how the stream goes. Uh, yeah, I mean, basically started learning Unreal Engine, and this is just a free assets map I could get from the Epic Games store or marketplace. It's called for the engine. And what I just did is that I changed the default playable character to another free model asset I got, which is cool. It was easy, but okay. Wait, I gotta find out what this means. Texture streaming pool over. Like, is it over my VRAM pool, or I have no idea how much VRAM I'm even using right now or anything. Let's see. Let's Google texture streaming pool over budget Unreal Engine 5. I'm guessing it's too much VRAM, or what is texture streaming pool size? Okay, so it's not actually related to my GPU, but it's because apparently the default VRAM is like default VRAM that is budgeted is like 1 gigabyte, so uh oh wait, but I'm also using 23 gigs out of 24. Jesus, that's crazy. Okay. I mean, everything is in Lumen right now, so it's real time lighting and shit. So it's probably one of the reasons why. Um. Okay. Okay. What I wanted to do now was try to make my character interact with something, like for example, being able to pick up a crystal like this one, or just interact with anything. Just I guess by interacting, I mean like the simplest interaction, which is I guess pressing a key and then that thing disappears or goes into your inventory or something. Well, obviously I don't even have an inventory system, but uh, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I get you'll probably be able to do it without an inventory system, right? Hmm. Okay, let's see. Um, interact with objects. This is 18-second video.
Hey guys,
Okay, I will just try to put up the YouTube video on stream as well. Would make sense, you know? Window capture. There we go.
and welcome back to another Unreal Engine 4 and 5 tutorial. So today's video, what we're going to be going over is how to create a 3D or an in-world interaction prompt for your games. So let me hit play and show you what we're going to make today. So as you can see, I have 3 cubes here that I can't actually interact with, but let's just pretend I can. If I were to walk up to them, you can see we
Okay, wait, my mic is getting picked up, or my speaker is getting picked up, even though it's pretty low. Can just change that. Okay, maybe I added a noise gate. Let's see if it works. I also have AI noise cancellation. Turn that up a little bit.
have this interact prompt that comes up here. It has an E on it and it says interact. And that is just to signify to the player that A, you can interact with this, and B, you have to press the E key to be able to do that. And again, it only shows when we are near it, and
Okay.
it's in the world, so it's
Seems to
always
work.
going to face the player as well, no matter which way they are looking at it. It'll always, you have to press the E key to we have this interact prompt that comes up here. It has an E on it and it says interact. And that is just to signify to the player that A, you can interact with this, and B, you have to press the E key to be able to do that. And again, it only shows when we are near it, and it's in the world, so it's always going to face the player as well, no matter which way they are looking at it. It'll always work the same way. So this is what we're going to be going over and creating today. So without further ado, let me delete this code, and I'll show you how I've done it. So the first thing we want to do is we obviously want to create this widget that we are going to be showing to the player.
I mean, I guess he is actually just making the interact prompt. Maybe there's one with both the prompt and actually like picking it up or something.
Hey guys, and welcome back to the
Oh,
interface
this is the
anything
same
but
guy.
to show create something which will allow us to interact with and open and close this door you see here. And we're doing this via blueprint interfaces, not doing it in the door blueprint itself. This just makes it a lot more efficient and a lot better for us and a lot easier to expand upon further down the line in our game as well. So this is what we'll be going over and creating today. So without further ado,
I don't really have a door here though. But I don't know if I can open anything on my I think I have a door. Let's see. Door. Door. Oh wait, okay. Uh I don't know if this door can open up. I guessing there needs to be an animation for it. I'm not sure if this door has an animation for opening up. Oh wait, this is a blueprint door, so I'm guessing it does. Uh, okay, it probably does. Oh wait, there's more blueprint here. Oh wait, this already has even an interaction. Oh, Lamo. Okay, but I still want to interact with. I want to make these crystals interactable. I guess I could try to figure out what's in this door thing. Wait. Also, for some reason, the blueprinting doesn't show up on stream. Why is that? Huh? Uh, oh, because it's a separate window. Really? I guess I have to capture my whole. It's just easier. I should just capture my whole screen. Just do display capture. Okay, there we go. Yeah, 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 yeah. Okay. So maybe we can try to figure out how this shit works. Okay, so they have the hotkey here. It's pressed. Then that goes into a true condition. So if the key is pressed, then it's true. I'm not exactly sure what the condition does. But anyways. Then this is something. Select an output that matches. So this is like an input value. So key gets pressed. Execution goes into true. So then you match an output with the input value. What kind of a blueprint tab is this? It would be useful to know. So I can make some. I don't know if it's an actor or. I mean, I should probably watch a blueprint tutorial. It'll just be way easier to probably decipher this. One sec, I'll get some what's it called? Lip ball, and then I'll look at the blueprint tutorial. Alright. Let's see. I could also look at the documentation. So there's probably like a whole blueprint tutorial under the learning library or something. Blueprint. Let me just show this. Uh, okay, there we go. Wait, is this the right one? No. There we go. So blueprints. Nothing here. Cesium tile. What the hell is that? Isn't there a search function? blueprint. Quick basic blueprint tutorial. This video is private. What? Okay, interesting. That doesn't work. Okay then. Intro to blueprint. May 1, 2023.
Hello.
Oh shit, that's 50 minutes. Okay.
View of how Unreal Engine even works. Otherwise, you might get a little lost. So check that one out first, then come back here after you've done that, and let's learn about some blueprints. So go ahead and start with a brand new third-person game template and load the starter content as well. If you did make your template and forgot to add the starter content, no problem. Just go to add, and you can do that anytime with any project. It's pretty handy actually. So to your project and add feature content.
Cannot write path to all. Well, I guess I can't do that anytime.
Content and starter content and add it to your project. You can do that anytime with any project. It's pretty handy actually. So what we want to start with is just building a very simple blueprint so you can understand the concept and the editor of how Blueprint works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my content folder. I'm just going to make a new folder and I'll call it my BP, just to have a folder name to organize this a little bit. And in here, I'm going to right click, go to Blueprint, and select. And we're going to start with the kind of the most general type of blueprint, and that's just actor. And I'm going to call it BP underscore, because that's just kind of the standard naming convention you'll find in most cases. And we'll just say light kit. Again, don't worry. I mean, definitely follow along, but don't worry about the very specifics of what we're doing. And you might be thinking, why is this useful? I would never use this. It's more about understanding the concept of Blueprint here, and this simple example will actually help you do that. So that's why we're making this really simple one. And if you find a use for this exact case, great. But focus more on learning what we're doing and why we're doing it than the exact specifics of this exact case. So here we have this blueprint, and what you want to do is double click to open it in the blueprint editor. This is your blueprint editor. Each blueprint you open may look a little bit different because remember, blueprint is a pretty vague term. There's many different types of blueprints. There's UI, metahumans are blueprints, and in this case we're just going to build a simple light. So again, this though is your standard editor when dealing with blueprint. So let's look at what we have here. We want to focus on these three tabs: viewport, construction script, and event graph. We're going to start at the viewport. This is so we can see the objects, if you have objects that are part of a blueprint.
Got the little sphere.
Here we have the components. These are the pieces that you're going to add to your blueprint. We want to add from the starter content, there's a sconce light, and we want to add a actual light to go inside that. So we're going to do 2 additions. Let's hit add here. And we want to add a static mesh. I'm going to show a couple ways to do this just so you see the difference. We're going to add a static mesh item, and you'll see static mesh is listed. You don't see anything update here because if you look at your static mesh that it got added to your kit, think of this as a kit of items. So static mesh, you come over here and look at the details of the static mesh. It is a static mesh actor, but it's not pointing to anything in particular. So it's, you might say, I want to rent a car. You still have to say, well, what kind of car do you want to rent, right? So that's, you say, I want a static mesh in here. Well, what kind of static mesh do you want? So you'll come over here, hit none. In this case, we want to do the lamp, and we want the in this kind of static mesh do you want? So you'll come over here, hit none, want the static mesh wall lamp, and there it is. So that is the first item that we've added to our blueprint, just this static mesh.
Torch.
And then we want a light to live inside this so that we can use this kit in multiple cases inside our level. So to do that, you can also hit add, and you're going to add, let's just add a spotlight for now. So I'm going to add a spotlight. Let's bring this up here. I'm going to turn off my snapping so I can put it exactly where I want. And I'm going to use rotate. Also turn it, well, maybe I'll leave snapping on because I want it at 90 degrees. So I'm going to rotate, turn it, well, maybe I'll leave snapping on because I want it at 90 degrees. So I'm going to rotate and point that up 90 degrees. And you do want to be a little bit careful because inside the static mesh of this lamp, please hold, need to do this every time. Go to your, go to your editor preferences if you like, and set that middle mouse pan on.
Yep, I have this on already. Pretty useful.
Much better. All right, so then notice that in the lamp itself there is a half a light bulb shape. You want to make sure not to put your light inside that because that'll affect your lighting otherwise. So I'm just going to put it maybe here. All right, so the settings for this particular spotlight you can preset inside your details here. So if you want a little bit wider cone angle, maybe you want a little bit of a strong inner and then have it fade out to a outer. Whatever you want to do, you have some control over it here. We'll talk about other ways to control items with
fade.
Whatever you want to do, you have some inner and then have it fade out to control items within a blueprint through this process. But we'll just start here, just give it a little bit of shape.
Well, torch is pretty
We'll leave the
narrow, so.
intensity. We'll just leave the defaults and for the rest, and we'll come back later and make adjustments.
Or I mean,
So currently we have a spotlight and we have a static mesh in this particular blueprint. Now, one thing to notice, there is a little bit of hierarchy here, and that is fine. That's actually good the way it's set up right now. This means if I move the static mesh, the light move, here's the icon for the light, the little spotlight there. So that is moving with the static mesh. If you didn't want something to be parented, you can just rearrange and drag and drop and move that there. So now I made the spotlight and the static mesh as independent shapes of each other. They won't affect each other when you move one or the other one. So I do want the spotlight to follow along with the lamp. So I'm going to drag and drop left mouse on that. So now they are parented. And we'll actually stop here and see how to use the simplest of blueprints in our scene. So I'm going to compile, save. We'll come back to the construction script and we'll come back to the event graph in a little bit. But for now, also I'm going to drag this next to my project tab. So now we have this blueprint, and what can we do with it? So again, think of it like a little lighting kit. You have static mesh and light already put together. So I'm going to bring that and put that inside my scene. Come a little closer. And let's see which way this, hit G to go into game mode for a moment, and we see that this is reversed from the way I want it on this particular wall. So I can come in here and spin it around 180 degrees and then move it against the wall. All right, so now we have a blueprint of a light, and this particular blueprint can be copied. You can drag and drop new ones.
wait, there was no light here. Oh yeah, let me do that as well. Right, let's just wrap up the intensity. Does that do anything? No. I actually know why there is no line.
Or you can just Alt, click and drag to move the instance of that. And then move it against the wall.
I mean, he didn't do anything
Scene.
else.
Come a little closer. Put together the construction script, and we'll come back to the project. You can of that multiple times. All right, so here we have our light working. Now, if we go to our blueprint again, what we can do is each instance of this is getting its values. Again, to move the instance. You can drag and drop new ones, or you can just Alt, click and drag to move the instance of that multiple times. All right, so here we have our light working. Okay. Now, if we go to our blueprint again, what we can do is each instance of this is getting its values. Again, there's some caveats with this. We'll add more detail of what you can do with it later. But if I go back to the blueprint, one benefit of using a blueprint is, let's say I want all of my lights to be brighter. So I'm going to put in 10,000 into the original blueprint and compile, save, look at it in here. And this just got a lot brighter.
You gotta compile it, right?
You'll have to believe, well, let's go dimmer, then you can notice the difference. You may not have noticed much of a difference. So
no, it's still the same.
Save. Now they're all really dim, right? So it's reacting to the different values. But
oh, wait. Was it because the light was actually like inside the torch, maybe? Because you said something about that, actually. Let me just make it way wider. YOLO. Okay, now it's not inside the actual torch. Yeah, okay, now it works. Okay, there we go.
But they're all changing together. So one note about that, what if you want to modify just one?
Yeah, because the light was inside the fucking torch itself before, but now not. Okay, great.
One particular instance. As we've set it up so far, you can do that. So this one here is called BP Light Kit 4. It's the fourth instance of this blueprint. I don't want to hit this button because editing the blueprint light kit is the same as going here, and it'll just modify it for all of them. But when you're using a blueprint, you do have access to the items. The BP Light Kit 4 about that. What if you want to modify just one particular instance? As we've set it up so far, you can do that. So this one here is called BP Light Kit 4. It's the fourth instance of this blueprint. I don't want to hit this button because editing the blueprint light kit is the same as going here, and it'll just modify it for all of them. But when you're using a blueprint, you do have access to the items, the components inside the blueprint.
One sec, I'm just turning on something. How's my stream looking? Looks like it's fine. Wait. What the fuck? It shows that it's only like 900. Kilobytes. Let's see. Okay, wait, no, it's very readable actually. It's fine. Okay, don't have to worry about that. That's great. Getting kind of warm, like a vest on and shit. 'Cause I took a cold swim before. Then I ate like a lot of hot food. I got pretty warm after that. Oh, now I'm kind of not boiling up, but getting pretty warm. Porch.
Print when you come down here and look at your details. So here's the top level of the whole blueprint. If you come down here and look, you'll see your spotlight and any hierarchy you've built inside your blueprint. So I'm going to select the spotlight. Then you'll see the properties for that spotlight. And this is the instance for just this particular blueprint use. So I can bump this back to 10,000. That
Okay.
one got bright, but
Where is the light? Oh wait, I'm looking at the wrong thing, I think. Okay, yeah, so this one is very dim now, for example, compared to the other ones. Yeah, that worked.
the other ones stayed dim. So the pros and cons here are you have individual control over what's inside there. However, when you do an override like this, when you've modified it from the default that you got from the blueprint itself, if you go back to the blueprint and modify it globally, so say I set the intensity to 0, compile and save, coming back to our scene, these ones were set to 0, but because I have a local override set on this particular use of the blueprint for the intensity value, then it wins. So this, because I had hand set this value, is getting used instead of the default value. If I do want to use the default value, I can just come over here, hit the little hook here that says, as you can read, reset this property to its default value, and now it's going to go back to 0 like the others are set. So again, coming back here, let's add a little value back here. Go back to 10,000, and it comes back on. Now you might be wondering, how come we have to hit this compile button? Technically, a blueprint is a way of coding, so you are doing a little bit of programming. It might scare you a little bit, but don't worry, that's why it's nice and visual, because it doesn't feel like programming in C++ or something. It's a little more, you know, for the commoner, it's a little easier to understand blueprint than full-on coding. So let's, again, go back to our map here and look at our 4 lights and think, you know, that's nice, but what else can we do? So let's do a little thing here. I'm going to delete a couple instances of these. So I got 2 lights now. I'm going to show, this leans a little bit more on the game side, but maybe there's potential uses as well on the cinematic side. We'll cover how it's useful in both cases. So let's go back to our blueprint. And what we want to do is, again, focusing on a game situation, we want to make these lights interactive. So an example of how blueprint can help you: when a character runs close to the light, we want it to turn, say, on or off, and when they leave, we want the light to go back on or off. So let's go into our blueprint, and things like that happen in what's called the event graph. So in the event graph, if you click on that tab, you'll see there's event begin play, and these are grayed out because we're not using them yet. actor begin overlap and event tick. Now, actor begin overlap means this actor that we're focusing on. So this blueprint is an actor blueprint. So we're talking about everything related to this blueprint. So the lighting kit, when something overlaps with the lighting kit, then we can make something happen. So we need to define
What do I mean
an
overlap? Yeah.
area. So what we're going to do for that is we're going to add a box collision. So grab box collision, and we can make this parented with the lamp. So I'm going to drag that onto the lamp there. And let's see what that looks like. Let's pop back to the viewport for a second, and you'll see this. So this box represents kind of a boundary condition for the lighting kit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move it just a little bit away. So it's not, if this was stuck against a wall, we don't want it to go through the wall, so a character running on the backside would turn the light on. We just want the character, when they come within a proximity of this light, we want something to happen, and we can set what that something will be. Actually, I'm going to scale this a little bit. I'll have to resize it in a second.
This is actually good because Torch is not going against the wall.
Or remove
Really?
it. Let's bring it back out here. I'm going to make it a pretty thin volume so that my two lights that are side by side, they're not going to interact with each other. I want them to kind of have their own independent use. Again, you can do whatever you want here, but I'm going to set it something like this, where when my character, I'm not sure how far in the floor this is going to go. So you just need to set a region that makes sense for the object you're working with. So this lamp's boundary is this volume here. And when my character runs into there, that will trigger, if I come back over here, this event begin overlap to work. So from here, what you can do is kind of anything. I'm going to bring in a reference to my spotlight, because that's what I'm going to have modified. I'm going to have my thing. I'm going to bring in a reference to my spotlight, because that's what I'm going to have modified. I'm going to have my spotlight's intensity change. So let's drag your spotlight into this little palette, into the event graph. And so this represents your spotlight. What I want to have happen is I'm going to bring this up here. I'm going to drag off that and type set intensity. So this operation here, this node is going to set the light's intensity when, now this will get triggered whenever I tell it to get triggered. And I want it to get triggered in this case when the actor is overlapped. So when something comes within the boundary of my lighting kit. So I'm going to plug that in there. When you're actually using it, this becomes active. Now, what is this white line doing in blueprints? This is your execution line. So this is things that happen. It says do this, then do this, and then you just keep continuing a chain from node to node when you want something to happen, and it's going to happen in the order that you put these in line. So right now I only have one event. Gets triggered here for overlap, and then what happens is it sets the intensity to, in this case, I'm just going to leave it to whatever I put here, which is 0. So let's compile, save, and see how that works in action. So go back to your map. I'm going to hit the play button. So I got my character over here, and I'm sure you all know this, WASD to move around and such, but watch as I come close to that light, it turns off. The other one stays on until I sneak into that one, and then that one turns off. As I run away from it, they don't come back on because I haven't set up any logic for that, right? If I come over here, all that I've had happen is I've set the intensity. When overlap happens, I've set the intensity to 0, and that's kind of the end of the story. So when that happens, that's its new value, and that's not going to change unless I set up some logic for that to change. There's various ways you can do that. You can have some toggles. You can have all sorts of code. You know, you have a lot of access to different tools in here. But let's talk about the idea of adding another type of event. I'm going to hit tab, and I'm going to type end overlap. Now, a lot of the difficulty of learning Blueprint is knowing what's even available. Oftentimes, you can just hit tab and hope, start typing and hope what you're thinking for logically would be there. And in this case, you might say, well, is there an end overlap node? And you just type end over, and look at that, event actor end overlap. So this is another situation when your character runs out of the overlap with the light. This will trigger. So let's say what we want to have in this case, we want to use the spotlight again. Now this is the same spotlight, so I can use that in both cases. So I'm going to pull this out, and I'm going to type set intensity. And when the overlap finishes, if I want that to do anything, I have to connect it here. And let's say in that case, I want to set the intensity, well, let's turn it back on a little more mild. We'll just say to 500. Right? So in this case, when the overlap begins, it's setting it to 0. When the overlap ends, it's setting it to 500. Now, some of you already know Blueprint. Might say, oh, there's other ways you can do this. Yes, that's the beauty of Blueprint and Logic. There's a bunch of different ways you could set this up. This is a way, just so you can see a way of how things can be set up. You have lots of, it's like building Lego. You can stack Legos however you want. So let's compile, save, and go back to our map, building Lego.
Wait, something did not work.
You can stack Legos however you want. So let's compile, save, go back to our map, and play. And running around here, that one goes to 0, but then when I come back out, it's set to the lower value that we had of whatever that was, 500 or 1,000, and same with this one. Its initial value goes to 0 when I overlap. When I come back out, it goes to what I told it to do. Now remember, programming, things just do what you tell them to do. So looking back in here, what did I tell it to do? When you begin overlapping, set it to 0. When you end overlapping, set it to 500. So the event graph can be used for things like event begin play. That means when you, this one here, when you play the game, what do you want to have happen? So
It was just to
say
them.
event begin play. That means when you, this one here, when you play the game, what do you want to have happen? So let's say, just as an example, at the very beginning, let's use another set intensity node for the spotlights. And when I did it this way, you'll notice, oh, you're talking about the spotlight, so it brought in the call to the spotlight. I can delete this if I want, or I can leave it. And
Wait. I wanna get a new blueprint. Blueprint, but it's not working. Yeah, okay, I don't care.
and reconnect. I'm talking about the spotlight here.
Read only. Why is it read only? What happened? Oh, is it because it's... Oh yeah, because I'm playing.
It's my target. What am I setting the intensity for? It's for the target of the spotlight. So when I begin the game, all right, so let's even look at this. Event begin play. So when you hit that play button to play the game, this gets triggered, this row here. So anytime you start a game and you want things to happen, they need to go off of this white line, this execution line. So what I want to have happen is, let's say at the very beginning of the game, now my blueprint, remember my blueprint default value for the spotlight, let's look at it, is 10,000. If I don't do anything here, then it's going to be 10,000. Let's say though, for the beginning of the game, I want to set my blueprint value of my lights to just a meager, let's say 50, right? So the idea is at the beginning of the game, my lights are going to be set to 50. When I overlap a light, it's going to be set to 0. When I end overlapping with a light, it's going to go up to 500. Again, these are all just so you can see how it works. Compile, save, and hit play. Now watch those lights. When I hit play, they got really dim. It was kind of hard to see because they're over here. I should move my character, but that's fine. So, right, so those got dim when I hit play. And when I get close to one of them, they go off. When I back up, it goes brighter than the other one because now it's at 500. At the beginning, it was 50. Now it's at 500. Same with this one. This one's off. This one's on. So now I'm just toggling between 0 and 500 when I'm going in and out of the volumes between the two. All right, super basic use of a blueprint with the event graph to see how you can set up some simple logic. So again, you have your triggers here. These are events. And then you have nodes that you can have affect the different parts of your blueprint. Now let's go back and talk about it. If I come back to my third person map here.
Let's make some tea. Pre-pre.
and I select one of my blueprints. Remember how I had to, if I wanted to change the value of one of them, I had to kind of burrow down inside the blueprint here to find my spotlight. Then I had to go find somewhere down here is my intensity if I wanted to change the original default, right? So if I wanted to change it versus the default from the blueprint, I would have to come down here. Now this is a pretty simple blueprint. Think of some blueprints might have hundreds of items in here, and you don't necessarily want to go digging through this hierarchy to go find the one thing you want to change. But you know there is certain values that you do want to change per use of a blueprint. So let's look at the construction script to see how we can set up access to those values from this top level of the blueprint. Because you'll notice as I select my blueprint here, I don't have any reference to intensity. So what we're going to do is talk about that next. So, and this is useful again for game or cinematic use. So let's go back to the blueprint and let's look at the construction script. So what you can do in a construction script is so what we're going to do is talk about that next. So, because you'll notice as I select my blueprint here, I don't have change per use of a blueprint. So let's look at the construction script to see how we can set up access to those values from this top level of the blueprint. Because you'll notice as I select my blueprint here, I don't have any reference to intensity. So what we're going to do is talk about that next. So, and this is useful again for game or cinematic use. So let's go back to the blueprint and let's look at the construction script. So what you can do in a construction script is when you create your blueprint, the items we set up in here will be called. It's probably going to make a little more sense as we actually do it. So let's get started and set up a variable for our intensity that we can use at that top level. So over here where it says variables, hit plus, and we want to add a variable for, I'm going to say my intensity. And the default variable type is a Boolean. Intensity is not a Boolean, so we're going to click on that and switch it to a float. So now we have a float value. And what we want to have happen is let's drag my intensity in here, and we're going to get whatever the value of my intensity is. So this is just a variable that you have control over. So this gets whatever that value is. And then from here, let's pull out some execution here. We're going to do a same node actually, set intensity on our spotlight. And again, when you did that, it says, oh, you mean that spotlight that's over there. So this is using that spotlight. And rather than having to hand type in a value here, we're going to plug in our variable use here. And let's give it a default. So if you select your variable here, so let's pull out some extra, just a variable in here. Same node actually, set intensity.
Why can't I see it? Set intense.
On our spotlight. And again, when you did that, it says, oh, you mean that spotlight that's over there. So this is using that spotlight. And rather than having to hand type in a value here, we're going to plug in our variable use here. And let's give it a default. So if you select your variable here, now in many instances when setting this up, you'll get a note here that says, please compile the blueprint. So it says default value, but you can't do anything. So come up here, do as it says, compile. Now you can preset your my intensity value. So again, let's see what's a value we haven't used yet. Let's use something nutty. Super, what's that? 100,000, let's do 1 million. We should see a pretty bright light doing that. Now, we're going to do this in a few steps because there's some easy places to get tripped up here where you think it works and it's not working. So let's go through those one at a time. So all we did so far is add a variable, and we add it to set intensity. And let's compile and save and go back to your third-person map. Now, because this is the blueprint light, changes we make will affect and show up in the actual blueprints we've already put in. So let's go over there. Look at how bright those are. Those are crazy bright, right? So those are so bright they're like blasting out our lamps. Now, while they're really bright, at this blueprint level, we still don't see any reference to intensity for, let's see, which one do we have picked? We have BP3 picked. So say we want to cut the intensity of just this one, and we don't want to go all the way down into the spotlight. So that's why we set up this variable, but we don't see any reference here to the variable. What you need to do, and this is one of those, oh yeah, I forgot about that moments, go back to your blueprint, and you'll see when you create a new variable here, it may be hard to tell because it's closed, but this is an eyeball. So if you click on that, now you have an open eyeball or a closed eyeball. So what this does is allow the value to be accessible outside of this blueprint itself. So it's a kind of a programming thing. So if you look here, I'm toggling the eyeball on and off, and also up here what's happening is this output says instance editable, meaning is this instance editable? And if you turn that on and off, you can see my eyeball down below on the left is also turning on and off. So you can change it in either place. So I'm going to say, yes, make this instance editable, not edible. We're not eating it, but make it editable and compile, save, go back to your project. And now you'll see, because we made it editable, that here I'm at the blueprint upper level. I have the opportunity to change the intensity way down inside the spotlight. But at this higher level, I can put in my 10, or that's pretty low, 100. So what we're really doing is by making that variable, we're elevating the variables so that you can control them way up here at the top level. If you use Houdini, it's kind of like HDA. If you use nuke, it's kind of like a macro. You're just promoting variables for use at a higher level. You don't want every variable down here potentially, but just the ones that you plan to change from blueprint to blueprint. If you do something like that, then you can make them available with easy access. So that primarily is one of the things that you can do within the construction script is set up these variables for external use. Now let's take a minute and talk about cinematics use of blueprints. So what I want to do now is I'm going to go up to the content level, and just here I'm going to go ahead and make a level sequence. And I'm going to double click it to open it. And let's say we want to animate the properties of this intensity. And I'm going to double click it to open it and make a level sequence. Is I'm going to go up to the content level, and just here I'm going to go ahead and make a level sequence.
Oh, it's cinematic. Oh.
And I'm going to double click it to open it. And let's say we want to animate the properties of this intensity of this particular blueprint that we set up. So let's add the blueprint to our level sequence. Of this particular blueprint that we set up. So let's add the blueprint to our level sequence. And while you do have access to the particular parameters down within here that you could, manually, print that we set up. So let's add the blueprint to our level sequence of this particular blueprint that we set up. So let's add the blueprint to our level sequence. And while you do have access to the particular parameters down within here that you could, manually keyframe, what we want to do is add an event trigger. So this kind of works into the blueprint process as well. So we're going to go to event trigger, and that's adding event track. So let's say about process as well. So we're going to go to event trigger. What we want to do is add an event trigger. So this kind of works into the blueprint process as well. So we're going to go to event trigger, and that's adding event track. So let's say at about frame 45. We want the intensity of this light to kick on, because we're trying to really control this. This isn't gameplay where we're running around into a volume. We're just setting up timing for when we have lights come on and off and such. So we're going to add an event here. So click on the plus to add a keyframe. This is how you add an event to an event track. You put a keyframe there, and it's kind of hard to see, but there's a keyframe there. Now, before I continue with this, what this is going to do is set up a kicking or an event. It's going to say, do something. I need to have a setup of what I want it to do. So let's jump back to the blueprint for a minute. And in your event graph, we've seen we have event begin play, actor overlap,
Oh, this is too fast now.
and overlap. We want to create our own custom thing to happen. So I'm going to move over here just a little bit, and I'm going to hit tab, and I'm going to type custom. So I want to add a custom event, and this just means I want to have something happen whenever I want it to have happen. So I'm going to say, let's say light boost. All right, so that's just a random name I made up that I want the light to be boosted when this is called. So what does that mean? So I'm going to bring in a reference to my spotlight. So really setting up kind of what we did over here. It's just I have a different type of event kicking it than the ones we've set up already. So I have my spotlight, and I want to set my intensity on it. So I'm going to say set intensity for the spotlight. And when I call light boost, I want the intensity to go to 1,000,000. Go back to, that's kind of bright. So let's go to 10,000. Now again, you can do this for colors, you can do this, you can almost do it for anything of your particular object. I'm just using one single variable over and over of intensity, so you can kind of see in a simple case. So when light boost is called, then this is going to happen. So how do I call light boost? So compile, save. Let's go back to our map. In the sequencer, when you set up an event for your blueprint, what you're going to do is connect this event to that light boost custom event. And the way you do that is you right click on this keyframe, and you go to properties, event, quick bind, property, boost custom event. And the way you do that is you right click on this keyframe.
Oh. Yeah, that's fucking hard to see.
And you go to properties, event, quick bind, because it already exists. This is why I kind of went over and made it and then came back here, because when it exists and you go into your blueprint and you go into the class and you go into your BP light kit, here's light boost, right? So because it's already there, it's easy to find. So I suggest working that way. Makes it kind of handy. So again, in case you're like, wait, where are you? So again, right click, set a key on your event, right click, properties, key, unbound. We want to bind this keyframe to something. So go here, do a quick bind to your blueprint, to the class, to the light kit, to light boost. So this is burrowing down inside your blueprint to get to that custom event we made. Now we get a new window pop up and it looks like our blueprint light kit, but it's not. This is another type of blueprint, and this is actually a blueprint that's associated with your level sequence. I'll show you how to open this again. It opened automatically for us, but all that's happening in here is this is inside our level sequence. This kind of represents your keyframe, and this represents the light boost custom event that you're called. So it's a visual way to see what we just hooked up. So this is what you hooked up, your keyframe to your light boost event, and this is part of your level sequence. Let me show you where that is. So I'm going to save, close. So here's your level sequence. How do I get back to see visually what I just hooked up? That is this icon right here. It says opens the director blueprint for the sequence. So this means this sequence has its own blueprint, and that's what that is. So click on that, and that's what we're looking at there. Let's close that again. And I'm going to leave this open because we're actually not done yet. There's a couple little things we have to do to make this actually work. So let's go back here and let's test it, right? So we should, in theory, when we hit play and it hits that keyframe, this light should boost on. So let's hit play. And doesn't seem like anything happened. So why is that? There's a couple more settings we have to do to make this work. Let's go back to that director blueprint. So in here, if you look at your keyframe trigger here, notice here there's a checkbox that says call in editor. Enable this event to be called in editor. So right now what that means is this is not being called in editor. So check that box, compile, save, come back to your level, hit play, and it works. Now there are some reasons this isn't necessarily the best example because it's being called in editor. So check that box, compile, save, come back to your level, hit play, and it works. Now there are some reasons this isn't necessarily the best example because, let's get in here a little bit. You'll notice if I go back before the timeline and hit play, it's still staying at the value we set it to. So it's doing what we told it to, go to 1,000, and then we didn't tell it otherwise to change. So let's look at an example of triggering something that's a little more of an event. You'd probably, for changing your light, you would probably just keyframe it with a value, but let's look at something a little more advanced. Let's pop in a Niagara event inside our blueprint. So I'm gonna go to my content browser and let's go to content level. So I'm gonna right click, go to effects.
I'm guessing this should be used for like, yeah, cinematics inside the game. Interesting. Very interesting.
Go to Niagara system, and I'm going to grab a template. So I'm going to use the top option, and then I'm just going to use a directional burst. So it's like the little sparks. So I'm going to use the two effects. I'm going to go to my content browser and let's go to content level. I'm going to right click, go to effects, go to Niagara system, and I'm going to grab. I'm going to right click, go to effects, go to Niagara system, and I'm going to grab a template. So I'm going to use the top option, and then I'm just going to use a directional burst. So it's like the little sparks are coming off the light option, and then under a system, and I'm going to
From selected emitter. I don't even have this. Qualify.
grab a template. So I'm going to use the top option, and then I'm just going to use a directional burst. So it's like the little sparks are coming off the light or something. So, and when we trigger it, it's going to shoot off some sparks. So I'm going to select that. directional burst, add that, and finish. And we'll just call it NS for Niagara System Burst. We'll just name it something, or Sparks, whatever you want to call it. Double click to open it. And this is really all it is. If you look over here, here's a little preview. Got a little bit of spray coming off of there. Let's line that there. Try to see that a little better. All right, so you can see a little spray coming off of there, right? So we're not going to change anything. Again, this is all just so you can understand how this trigger system works. I don't even think I need to compile. I'm going to save it. I'm going to close it. And I'm going to add it to my blueprint. Remember, a blueprint is just a kit. So I'm going to go to my blueprint light kit here. And let's go to our viewport. Here was my objects. I can leave the box here as well. Let's add it here. Another way to add things to your blueprint. Let's go to our content browser. I'm going to grab my Niagara system, drag it up to the tab for the blueprint, and drop it in my components list. That gets added here. I want it parented with the static mesh. I probably should rename this to be something like the
What?
skull
That didn't
static
work.
mesh. It's added here, and drop it in my components list. That
Did not work for me for some reason. And I have no idea why. What if I save? Nope, nothing. Interesting. Interesting.
gets added here. I want it parented with the static mesh. I probably should rename this to be something like the sconce, just so I can recognize it quicker. And I want my Niagara system to be parented in the sconce, so when they move all together. I'm going to slip that in there. So there's a little preview of the spark coming out there. I'm going to compile, I'm going to save, and go back to my third person map. Spark coming out there. I'm going to compile Niagara system to be parented in the sconce, so when they move all together. I'm going to slip that in there. So there's a little preview of the spark coming out there. I'm going to compile, I'm going to save.
Nope. It's nothing. Why?
And go back to my third person map. So now what I want to do, rather than have the lights change values, I want to have
Wait. What? Okay, I don't know. I guess this was not the real one.
have that Niagara system triggered. So I'm going to go back to my level sequence. And this time I'll go ahead and leave everything called the same. Hopefully that's not too confusing for you, but in this time, light boost isn't going to be boosting light. I'm going to go back to my blueprint into my event graph. And instead of this light boost, it's just a name. You could call it whatever you want. Instead of light boost, you know what? I'm going to do that. I'm just going to call make spark so you can see. You can do that. You can just rename it. So make spark. And this time it's not going to be setting any kind of intensity. I'm going to bring in a reference to my Niagara system. Bring that in here. I'm going to pull out a little string there. Kind of intensity. I'm going to bring in a reference to my Niagara system. Bring that in here. I'm going to pull out a little string there and type activate. And I want it to activate. When we trigger this, I want it to be activated. So, blow some sparks out. So I'm going to redirect my action here. By the way, if I did want to mess with my intensity and then shoot off sparks, I could come here, then wire that into there. So that's an example of how you would chain a bunch of events together. But I'm ditching the intensity example now that you understand the basics, because it does get a little messy with resetting values and things like that. So let's just do that. So I don't need this, so I'm going to Alt-click to delete lines. So I probably don't think I mentioned that before. So Alt-click anytime you need to disconnect things. So now when our keyframe triggers the event, it's going to kick this make spark, which is going to fire off the activate. And that activate just means, quote, activate the Niagara system. So I'm going to compile, save, go back to my map, go back to the beginning of my level sequence, save, go back to my map, go back to the beginning of my level sequence, and you might wonder what the heck is going on. Why is that going crazy? So I do have a set, and you might wonder what. Go back to my map, go back to the beginning of my level sequence, and you might wonder what the heck is going on. Why is that going crazy? So I do have a setting that I left on from playing around earlier. If I go back
For
to
me,
my
it works.
lighting kit, if I look at my class settings, in the class settings for my blueprint, I've turned on run construction script in sequencer, which means it's always going to be running and constructing and triggering off my sparks, because the sparks are part of the, like even just right there, whenever you.
Wait, where is my light so intense? Okay. Where is the default value of this? I forgot. I think it was this. Oh, but now it's like here. I am a little bit lost already, not gonna lie. I don't know where it's getting the 10 whatever you just number from. How many zeros to count? Is all of them? Yeah. I mean, this one I changed. That's why this one does not. So why? I don't know. Anyways, get used to this.
You call it, it's going to shoot off some spark. So I actually want to uncheck this. I don't want this construction script running in sequencer. See, it says continually rerunning it. If you did have changing values or you did want the spark to continually trigger, you could do that. Let's go back to compile. Let's go back to save. Let's go back to the map. And then going all the way back to the beginning of my level sequence, hit play. Boom. It shoots off a spark at that point. It's just a single call to our make spark custom function. If we look here at our sequence level blueprint, we see that this is representing again the keyframe. I renamed the custom event to be make spark. So keyframe calls this. This is over here in the blueprint in the event graph. This is now our make spark custom event.
Right.
Keyframe calls this. This is over here in the blueprint in the event graph. This is.
But how is that all of a sudden? Oh. Wait, how did you get it there? I forgot.
Now
I think we
our
dragged it
make
maybe?
spark.
No. I mean, I guess you can copy it here. But not the same. Spark.
Spark custom event. It's causing that Niagara system to activate, which is just a single spray when it gets activated. All right, so that's just an example of something you might practically do within your level sequence in terms of calling a custom event inside a blueprint. I did have a specific reason for using a lamp like we built here as an example, because let's say later on you've kind of forgot how we did this. Check this out. If you go into the starter content, go into the props, and you'll see here we have the lamp, right? So here's the lamp, but if you go into the blueprints, you'll see that there is a blueprint for the wall sconce, and if you drag that in, here it comes in here. They have provided in the starter content a very similar asset to what we just created. So they called it blueprint wall sconce. Let's actually also, let's go into the map for the starter map. So double click to launch that. If you want to save the things you've done in this original map, go for it. So if you jump over to the starter map, you'll see, and this may be a map you've seen a ton of times, but you may not have realized that the light they're using in there is actually a blueprint. So let's let this load here, compile some shaders, and take a look at this lamp over here. Frame in on that. I'm going to G to get rid of my game stuff, and check it out. So that lamp there is this blueprint wall sconce. Let's edit this blueprint, and you'll see what they've done is if you go to your viewport, we have basically the same thing that we've done already. We have the lamp geometry, and then now in this case, this is just kind of a oops on Epic's part, I guess. This says point light 2. This technically isn't a point light, it's a spotlight. If you hover your mouse there, you'll see it says spotlight. If you did want a point light, you could say add, and you could add a point light, right? So you could add a point light, but that has actually a different icon. So that is a point light, whereas this is technically a spotlight. So minor detail, but who cares at this point? So here is the same setup we had, and it has some default values and such. If you look at the construction script, you'll see they've added a little bit more detail to their base values for modifying than we did. They have intensity hooked up to a brightness. So you'll see here, if you look at the variables, you have brightness, color, inner cone, and outer cone. And so that's what they have, these different blueprint nodes. Again, a lot of these are, it takes a little bit of trial and error to, you know, if you didn't know there was a light color, set light color, you could hit tab and you just kind of guess. You're like, I bet there's one called set light color, and you'll say, hey, check it out, there is one called set light color. So oftentimes, as you're getting used to what the different options are, you might just be guessing. Or like I said, just start looking at other blueprints that exist out there to get a feel for what you can do and what ones might be available. But you'll see here's all the different variables, and what that allows us to do is, let's see, do they have anything in the event graph? No, they don't have any kind of interactive setup for this. It's just for actually creating a little kit of a light. So if we go back to the starter map, and if we look at this particular wall sconce and look at the settings, you'll see you have your brightness, color, inner and outer cone angle that you can set for each instance, right? Remember, if I alt drag and alt drag and alt drag, so I have all these different instances of the sconce, but because these values have been pulled up to the top level of the blueprint, I don't need to go burrowing down inside there for it. I can just select the blueprint level. I can even hide all these values if I want, and come down here and, you know, change my light color or make that one green. So you can customize each individual blueprint instance. You want that one a little brighter, so give it a little boost in there. So if at the end of this video, maybe in a couple months, you can't find the file you followed along, you can always go to the starter content, go find this lamp and open up the blueprint and start taking a look at it and see how they put it together, because that's the same thing we really did already. And you also have a couple other blueprints in here. You have in the blueprints folder, the ceiling light is a blueprint. You have some of these out here, these sparks and such are blueprints. So again, I encourage you just to kind of poke around now that you kind of know the format of how a blueprint is set up. And this information also applies to metahumans. So you might be thinking, that's a big jump to go from a simple lamp to a metahuman for a blueprint, but I just want to show you it's not that crazy of a jump now that you have a basic understanding of blueprint. And I'll show you a cool trick that you can do to change different parts of a metahuman. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to kill real time for a minute. So let's come over here and turn that off. And then let's look at a metahuman. If you don't have any metahumans in your scene yet, I have a few here that we can look at. But what you want to do if you're kind of new to the metahuman, but you still want to follow along, all you need to do, it's a lot easier than you would think. Open up Quixel Bridge from your drop down up here, go to metahumans. And if you have never downloaded one before, you'll need to select the character you want. And then actually you're also going to have to sign in with your Epic account. But then you'll hit a button that says download, and then there'll be another button that says, actually I forgot the exact button, so let me sign in as well really quick. And okay, so now you'll see when you select a character, if you've never downloaded the character before, there'll be this arrow to download, or you can come over here to download. That'll put it on your machine locally, and then to add it to your actual project, you would then hit this add button. For example, if I come to this character, she's already been downloaded in the past, so I got the green check already. To add her to my current project, I would just hit the add button. So I've done that already. When you do that, again, if this is your first time doing this, it'll require you to restart your engine and enable some plugins and things like that, but it's no big deal. Just go ahead and do it. It's kind of fun. And once you've downloaded a couple of them, so I'm going to work with Bernice and Io, or Io, whatever her name is here. And so let's close this for now. And let's take a look in the metahumans folder here. So I'm going to go into Bernice here. You'll see Bernice, it says BP Bernice. Bernice is a blueprint. So I'm going to double click to open the blueprint for Bernice. And it may take a few seconds. And let's go first to somewhere we're familiar with. Let's go to the viewport. And here's your character. All right, so here's my Bernice character. So Bernice, while looking like a single asset here, is actually made up of a bunch of parts, just like our lamp blueprint was. So if I look at this part here, it says body. The body technically is just the hands, and the feet. Inside her shoes are some feet. And over here, the skeletal mesh that it's pointing at is, if I was to open this up, it would just be some floating hands and feet. Let's actually do that. Let's double click and open it up. So that is technically all that is the part of her body, hands and feet. So let's close that. Come back here. Now the feet in this case is referring to the shoes. So her feet skeletal mesh is these shoes. And similar to the lamp, it's pointing to this skeletal mesh asset is pointing to these particular boots. What if we want to change these boots to a different character's boots? We can do that. Let's go back to our content browser, and I'm going to open up the other character, Io, and I'm going to open up this character by double clicking. Also going to the viewport tab. And, oh, is she wearing the same boots? How unfashionable. Oops, GPU crash. I'll be right back. All right, and we're back. So again, let's take a look at these characters. So since they are wearing the same boots, let's find something else to swap, because otherwise that's not, oops, legs. What is she wearing? Those jeans versus those red pants, right? So if I go to legs, she's wearing these red leather pants. If I look at Bernice legs is wearing these jeans. So they are wearing different skeletal mesh assets for the legs. So what we need to do is check this out. What if I want this character to wear these pants? All I need
He's like meowing.
to do is note here, these pants, I'm going to select them by hitting this button in the content browser. So that selects the pants over here. Come back to Bernice, hitting there, these pants. All I need to do is note here, these pants, I'm going to select them by hitting this button in the content browser. So that selects the pants over here. Come back to Bernice. And when you hit this button, notice what it says, use the asset from the content browser to swap out here. So I'm going to click that, and that's going to swap out the pants. Now this doesn't always work exactly, because you'll see the pants here are kind of meant for a slightly bigger character. If I look over here, she's got a bigger waist than the first character. So that's why it kind of doesn't quite fit the same character. So waist. And when you hit this button, notice what it says, use the asset, selects the pants over here. Come back to Bernice. I meant for a slightly bigger character. If I look over here, she's got a bigger waist than pants. And hit the comments. All I need to do is note here, these pants, I'm going to select them by hitting this button in the content browser. So that select.
Anyway, I want to do that too.
Selects the pants over here. Come back to Bernice. And when you hit this button, notice what it says, use the asset from the content browser to swap out here. So I'm going to click that, and that's going to swap out the pants. Now this doesn't always work exactly, because you'll see the pants here are kind of meant for a slightly bigger character. If I look over here, she's got a bigger waist than the first character. So that's why it kind of doesn't quite fit the same character. So this is just a metahuman thing, right? You can mix and match the heftiness of your characters, whether they're thin, underweight, or overweight. So she must be a little thinner than the default IO character. Which is fine. Maybe I want to go ahead and put in the same top as well, so we don't see that mismatch. So in here, in this case, you'll see same thing. I'm going to select with this button the asset from the content browser, go back to Bernice, swap out the top of her body. So the torso is pointing at this original skeletal mesh. So I'm going to hit this button to grab the one that's in the content browser, and it's going to switch over to that. Now again, this isn't always going to work, because look, she's missing her belly. That's because with IO here, if you select the body, you'll see that the body includes a little bit of the mid region to fill in that gap. So while it's not quite an exact Lego situation of making it easy to swap perfectly, you also need to be careful, because when you make these switches, you need to make sure the right materials are coming over as well. If you need to swap the right materials, let's go back into this character, and looking at the pants, we had MI player belt and MI player pants. But if I come over to Bernice and look at the pants, this second material is proper, but the top one, this belt here, check out that belt versus that belt. This is all studded. This is using this material, whereas over here, when I added the skeletal mesh, it didn't account for the material that was already assigned in element 0. So it didn't swap the material for me, it just swapped the skeletal mesh. So one more step, let's go back to IO, select this material that should be used for her belt in the content browser, and then coming back over to Bernice, I want that material on this belt, so I can just hit this button, and that brings the material over. So if we look at another aspect of this blueprint, if we go to the event graph, you'll see that there are a lot of things hooked up for when you're using the live link in here, and in the construction script, a lot of this is, again, just set up so when you bring in your character, all of these are run when you first drop your character into your scene with a construction script. This is probably getting a little bit out of the realm of a intro to blueprint, but I do just want you to understand the idea of, again, This set of components is just a kit that you're using to put together this character, and you could swap out the different pieces to customize your characters a bit. So hopefully all of this has been useful for you to get you into Blueprint, to kind of poke around, just to get familiar with it, especially if it was foreign to you and you've never looked at it before, so that you can start playing around for games, for cinematics, for customizing your metahuman. It's not as bad as you think once you start getting in there. So just jump in there, play around, reverse engineer some other blueprints you find, and have fun with it. Cheers.
Real question. Can we somehow... Well, I kind of got distracted, but I did want to originally just interact with stuff. Like interact with these crystals, for example. Like pick them up or something. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so SM crystal. Browse to acid. So how do I create the blueprint out of this? Crystal. EP. Interact. Crystal. Let me just close this. All right, now we have the crystal. What if we open up the door blueprint, for example? We could get the... Holy fuck. I mean, it's not that much, of course. Okay, let me just try to make something maybe. The door. This destroy component. Okay, would this work? Or oh, we need a branch thing. Branch. Did anything change from this? So